Close your eyes for just a moment and put yourself up on a mountain ridge in early October. The air carries that particular bite that October has, not quite cold enough to see your breath, but cold enough that you know it's coming. The kind of morning where the fog sits down in the holler like it's got nowhere better to be. You can smell wood smoke and something frying in lard, and the ground under your feet is hard and honest, and then you hear it. Thud, thud, thud. That sound. If you grew up in these mountains, or if your people did something, in your chest recognizes it before your brain does. It's the sound of a rug being beaten clean on the line. Not a store-bought rug, not something that came off a truck. A rug that started its life as something else entirely. A rug made from the worn-out legs of work pants, blue jeans mostly. Denim so old it had gone pale at the knees and frayed clean through at the cuffs. That sound, that heavy particular thud, was the heartbeat of a mountain household. It meant the floors were being kept. It meant somebody was up before the light and working after it. It meant the family was still here, still holding on. Now, most folks today, if they see a rag rug at a craft fair or hanging on a farmhouse wall, they think quaint. They think cute little old-timey thing. They move on, but they don't know what they walked past. Welcome back to Legends from the Holler. Tonight we are going to talk about Appalachian Blue Jean Rugs and their importance. Those rugs weren't decoration. They weren't made because someone had a spare afternoon and a crafty spirit. They were made because nothing in these mountains was ever allowed to be gone. Not truly, not completely. There's an old belief up in these ridges, passed down quiet-like from grandmother to granddaughter, that goes something like this. The strength of the body stays in the cloth that covered it. The sweat of a man's labor soaks into his work pants over years of hard use. And when those pants finally give out, that strength doesn't just disappear. It waits. It stays in the fiber, patient as stone. People called it different things in different hollers. Some called it the spirit of wasting not. Some didn't call it anything at all. They just knew it. The way you know things you learned before you had words for them, the cloth remembered. And if you were wise and if you were skilled with your hands, you didn't throw that memory away. You wove it into the floor of your home. Now let me tell you something about denim, because denim deserves a proper introduction. The word comes down through French d'Enchiems, meaning from Enchiems, a city in the south of France where they wove a particular kind of sturdy serge cloth. But what made denim the fabric of the American working body was the dye, indigo. That deep particular blue that doesn't really have a clean comparison. It's not navy, it's not cornflower, it's indigo, and it has a history as long and complicated and beautiful as the mountains themselves. Indigo dye has been used by human hands for over 6,000 years. In West Africa, in India, in Japan, in the ancient Americas, it was traded like currency. Wars were fought over the plants that produced it. And when enslaved African people were brought to the American South, many of them carried the knowledge of indigo cultivation in their very hands. Knowledge that built a significant portion of this country's early agricultural economy. That history is woven into every thread of blue denim ever made in America. You don't get to separate the cloth from that story. Now, here's the part that always makes me pause. In the Appalachian tradition, there's a color called Haint Blue, a pale dusty blue, somewhere between sky and water, that was painted on porch ceilings and window frames and door thresholds to ward off haints. Haints being spirits, restless ones, the kind that haven't moved on or mean you some harm. The belief came from the Gullah Geechee people of the coastal South. But it spread and took root in mountain culture with a quickness, because mountain people recognized truth when they heard it. And here's what I find extraordinary. The same blue that protected the thresholds of the house was woven into the floor of the house. Indigo blue, denim blue. The protection wasn't just painted on the frame, it was laid down underfoot, in the very cloth that a family walked across every morning of their lives. The craft itself, the making of the rug, was called twining in some communities, or just rug braiding or strip weaving depending on where you were in the hills. The process was physical. It was not delicate work. You'd start by tearing your denim into strips. Not cutting, tearing. There's a difference. Cutting is precise and fast. Tearing is something else. You'd get your fingers into a seam or a worn edge, and you'd pull. And the sound of it, that long, growling rip of heavy denim, echoed through the house. Children remembered that sound. Grandchildren remembered it. The strips came out rough-edged and alive-looking, and you'd tie them end to end into one long, continuous strand. A wooden frame, sometimes lashed together from whatever the woodpile offered, held the warp threads under tension. The weaver would pass the denim strips over and under, packing each row tight with her fingers or a flat stick. The heavy seams of the jeans, the inseams, the waistband pieces were the hardest to work with. They'd resist the weave. They didn't want to lay flat. But that's exactly why you used them. The parts of the fabric that had held the shape of a body most rigidly, the parts that were stiffest with memory, those went into the rug because they held their place. A rug made with the easy cloth wouldn't have the weight, wouldn't have the presence. Denim, you see, was the gold standard of mountain survival fabrics. It dried fast enough in summer and held heat close enough in winter. It held its weave through years of hard use. It wore at the surface before it gave at the bone. A man's work jeans might last him a decade of daily labor before the knees went, and even then, the rest of the cloth still had years in it. Nothing was wasted. Nothing was ever truly gone. Now we come to the part that you won't find in craft books. A rug laid at the threshold at the front door, or the back door coming in from the fields, wasn't just a place to wipe your boots. It was a line, a spiritual boundary, and in the belief of many mountain families, a rug woven from the work clothes of a good man. A man of honest labor and decent character carried his virtue as a kind of armor. The Haints and the mimickers being those particular spirits that could take on the appearance of someone you loved in order to get themselves inside a house. They couldn't cross a true threshold, and a rug woven from a good man's worn-out denim. That rug was the threshold. You laid it down and his strength became the door. You keep Daddy's jeans in that rug, an old woman in Letcher County once told her granddaughter, and Daddy keeps standing at the door long after he's gone. I don't know that I can explain it better than that. Now, the law of the knot. This is a tradition shared across many textile cultures, from Appalachian weavers to Persian carpet makers, and it says this: you leave one mistake in the weave. Intentional, deliberate, you might reverse a color or leave a loop unfinished, or weave one strip going the wrong direction. The reason, depending on who you asked, was humility. Only the divine could make something perfect, and to attempt perfection in your craft was to invite the kind of pride that invites disaster. But there was a second reason, older and quieter than the first. A perfect weave, with no loose ends and no breaks in the pattern, could trap a spirit inside it. The intentional flaw was a door, a way out. You wove your family's love and labor into that rug, but you left the imperfection so that the souls you were honoring could pass through freely when they needed to. Mountain theology is like that. It holds two truths at once, without apology. And then there was the memory of the knee. The knees of a man's work jeans were considered the most sacred material in the whole rug. Think about what the knees of work pants hold. The impression of every time a man knelt to plant or to fix a fence post, or to look his child in the eye, or to pray. Mountain people knelt to work more than they knelt in church, and they didn't necessarily think there was much difference between the two. That pale, paper-thin fabric at the knee had been shaped by the hardest and the most tender moments of a life. When that cloth went into the rug, it went in the center or near the hearthside edge, the place of honor. You didn't put the memory of the knee at the door to be walked on by strangers. You put it where the family stood. I want to tell you about a woman named Dessa. I'm going to protect her family's full name because her great-granddaughter is still living up in Harlan County and asked me to. Dessa was what the mountains called a granny woman, a healer, a midwife, a keeper of old knowledge. She was not a small woman in any sense of the word. And in the winter of 1933, which was a winter that nearly broke what the Depression had already bent, Dessa decided that her family was not going to come apart. Her husband Coy had died the previous spring of a lung condition that no one had the right name for, and he left behind 4 children. A mother-in-law with bad joints and a farm that needed twice the hands it had. Dessa kept working. She always kept working. That November, she brought out every pair of Coy's work pants from the cedar chest, overalls, dungarees, the heavy duckcloth trousers he'd worn to the timber work. She washed them one more time, dried them by the fire, and she spread them on the table, and she looked at them for a long time. Then she started tearing. Every evening that winter, after supper was cleared and the children were doing their schoolwork, Dessa sat at the loom her father had built her as a wedding gift, and she wove. She let the children help when they asked. She had her mother-in-law sort the strips by shade, the darker indigo for one pile, the faded near-white pieces for another. The old woman's hands shook some, but she could still sort cloth. She was glad to have the work. By February, there were 3 rugs, one at the front door, one by the hearth, one in the room where the children slept. Dessa said later that the winter felt different once the rugs were down, whether that was the denim trapping some warmth or whether it was something else. She never made a strong claim either way, but she said the children slept better. She said she felt less alone when she walked through her own house. "I put him back under our feet," she told her daughter years later. "He was always underneath us, holding us up. That's just where he belonged." That is Appalachian resilience. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't ask for recognition. It finds the thing that is broken or gone, and it weaves it into something that holds the family together for another season. We live in a time that is very good at making things, and not very good at remembering them. We buy rugs from warehouses. We throw out clothes that have years left in them. We move fast and we accumulate fast and we discard faster still. And very few of us stop to think about what we're throwing away when we throw away a worn-out pair of jeans. But these old ways, the twining and the tearing and the weaving, the folklore of the threshold and the law of the knot, they're not just charming relics. They are a specific kind of wisdom that says, you are not separate from the things that sustain you. The labor of the ones who came before you is still present. It's in the floors you walk on. It's in the walls around you. And if you know how to honor it properly, it can still hold you up. We are, all of us, standing on foundations we didn't build. And some of those foundations are made of denim. Well, thank you for sitting with me a while today on Legends from the Holler. These stories, they mean something to me that I struggle to put entirely into words. Not because the words aren't there, but because some things live better in the telling than in the explaining. If you have your own family craft tradition, a rug making practice, a quilting story, a grandmother who did something with her hands that you've never quite seen explained anywhere, I want to hear about it. Put it in the comments below. These stories belong to all of us, and the more we share them, the less chance they have of being lost. If this spoke to something in you, share it with somebody. Put it in front of someone who might need a reminder that the old ways still have weight. And this one today, this particular story of the blue jean rug and the women who made them and the families they held together, this one I dedicate to the grandmothers. The ones who kept the hearth fires burning through seasons that would have broken most of us. The ones who turned poverty into provision and grief into craft and worn out work clothes into the very foundation of the home. The hollers still hold their secrets, friends, and now and then, if you're quiet enough, you can still hear them.